I am not talking about everyone, but I'm talking about many of them. Hey everyone, welcome back again to your podcast S2Cube, Success and Subjectivity for the Society. I am so glad of being here again one more time with you guys. Welcome back. Thank you for all the inviting references to this channel that you have been doing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. I wanna do an episode, as I already told you, that I haven't been able to do yet, thanking each one of the countries where I have received many special listens and many special references. Those are in my distribution platform of podcast in the different podcast platforms. Just in case if you're not listening to this in YouTube, we also are in Spotify, in Apple Music, in Amazon, in iHeartRadio, and so many platforms more. So thank you so much for all your support in those platforms, guys. And now that Google Podcasts disappear, we are in YouTube Music. So thank you so much for your support over there, in case you don't see the image, but in YouTube Music we do have the image. In the standard YouTube we also have the image, so if you're watching me, thank you so much guys for letting me be part of your life and part of your time. As you can remember, in previous videos I've told you about doing another video reactions of Star Wars. Especially we are gonna do other movies as well, but in this case we're gonna do a video reaction of a scene of the previous movie. So, being that said, I have nothing more to say than thank you so much guys, thank you so much for being here again, and let's go right to it. Okay, in this video we're gonna react to a certain scene that I think is crucial and quite important to talk about if we wanna connect the points to achieve the goal we have, which is going after the truth, right? And to connect the points to be able to understand the main idea of what I want to tell you with all these video reactions of Star Wars. So, as I told you some videos ago, we also have to react to the previous movie to be able to understand this one and the main teaching I want to show you here. Therefore, I want to react in this video to General Hux' speech and the Starkiller Base fire shot in Star Wars The Force Awakens, released in 2015, which was the same movie where Rey meets Luke at the end part of the movie in the island. So here we go. Let's take a look. But before watching the scene and before showing you the scene, I want to talk about a crucial point and such a main important point here, which is the organic portals. So I want to tell you about the organic portals here, and I want to explain you why organic portals are so important and relevant in this society, and why our interaction with organic portals defines a lot of things in our lives, because they are people that occupy such an important role in society, many of them. That's why I want to explain you who they are, how can you recognize them, and what do they do in society. So first of all, remember guys that this is a mental health podcast based, in my point of view, from social psychology, which is the main subject here on this podcast, and also music, both as social psychology and music. So we're gonna study a field of human behavior that is not actually studied by psychology, neither psychology nor sociology nor anything that has to be with behavior of human beings, because we're talking about another dimension. It's important to clarify that this is a spiritual and metaphysical idea. It's not a scientifically validated psychological or psychiatric term. So it's important to clarify that before starting. So I'm gonna explain you what organic portals are. In spiritual or esoteric circles, particularly in some New Age or Gnostic influenced by belief systems, organic portals are thought to be humanoid beings that appear physically to be human but lack of a true soul or higher consciousness. So let's take an analysis of that sentence at first before carrying on with the rest of the explanation. Do you remember that in some videos ago I told you that that power of God, that power of the love, universe, whatever you want to call it, known as God, exposed by the church, especially by the Catholic Church, which is the most big and most huge exponent of Christianity worldwide, worldwide. Do you remember that power that they expose as a third party, I actually told you that is inside ourselves instead of what they expose? Well, when we talk about that power, we're talking about consciousness, and we're talking about God, and we're talking about knowledge. We're talking about manifestation. Because when you expose that you have consciousness and you have awareness, you expose that you have knowledge. It basically means with knowledge. By the way, I want to tell you a fun fact that is very interesting. Do you know that in Spanish the word awareness and the word consciousness means conciencia? And when a person is aware and understands something, you can say consciente. It's like, that means like an aware person. When you are aware, you are consciente. And that means consciente, it's like consciousness, consciente, but with your entity. Consciente. Ente means entity in Spanish. In Italian it's consapevolezza, and in Portuguese it's conhecimento, which is knowledge. So that's basically what you have to do. Learn and try to acquire as much knowledge as you can, if it is possible, because that's what will define your divine status inside, if we can call it like that, your divine consciousness inside yourself, which is God. What they want to expose as a third party, but actually you have that power. The thing is that we don't know how to use it, and we don't know anything about it. So God, as I already told you in some episodes ago as well, what did you expect if I told you last time that God is a huge and the biggest source of omniscience in the universe, in the galaxy ever? So that means that he knows everything. Totally the opposite of humans. And if he knows everything, that's related to what I told you, right? When you know something, you are learning. And when you learn and you know something, you got that knowledge. And that knowledge is awareness. And I don't have to explain what awareness means. Awareness means your conscience, or if you want to understand that clearly, your soul. That's the importance of learning. So what I was telling you about organic portals is that they lack of a huge soul or higher consciousness, as I was telling you. So the idea is that they function more like biological machines, running on basic instinct, social programming, and ego, often described as lacking deep empathy or spiritual awareness. They are sometimes portrayed as easily manipulated by external energies or systems of control. Did you hear that? Think about it for a second. Systems of control. They are not doing that because just they want to. No, they are part of such an important gear and plan, and they have a purpose, as we as well have a purpose. We have a purpose too. We, the clean and pure carriers of a pure soul of consciousness, which is the power of God. Remember that I told you that we are like kind of gods, and the church wants to expose that that power of God only belongs to them, and you can only have access to that power through us. We are the only ones who can give you that power. No, that's a lie. We have that power inside each one of ourselves. So here appear the most important thing and the first key factor and the first key point in this video: systems of control. Do you remember what I told you about the Catholic Church and the huge institutions of religious power worldwide, like the evangelists, the Protestantism, the Jewish, the Muslims, the Christianity, and the Catholic Church, which is their most influential branch of Christianity and the biggest one? So remember, a system of control is an institution that makes everyone believe that they are like the main authorities regarding to certain subject, regarding to certain topic, but they are not. They don't wanna reveal us that we have that power inside ourselves, because they would lose all their power. They would lose all their power, and we would increase our spirituality. So if you don't understand what that is control. They are controlling us so we can rebel against them, because when you don't know something, it's easier for them to manipulate you and to make you act and behave the way they want. So we will be like that forever. That's why the bad education, that's why the education system is not very good. And this is everywhere. This is not only in one country. But we have to take into account that to be able to reach to a bigger level of consciousness. So let's keep going with the point of organic portals. From a mental health perspective, which is the thing that we evaluate here in this channel and in this movement, the S2Cube family, This concept overlaps with discussions of empathy, consciousness, and personality disorders, but it's crucial to note that. So I want to tell you about science, which is another institution. How to say this? Religion is not the only institution of power in this world. We have policy, we have religion, we have the science institution, we have the education system, we have a lot of things. We have the music industry because we talk about music. We have the sports industry like the World Cup institution, the FIFA, the Olympic Games. Those are main institutions of power. But let's focus here in science. There's no clinical or neuroscientific evidence supporting the literal existence of organic portals. So that's the first thing. Do you remember that I told you in the episode of manifestation that it's very ignorant for human beings exposing that something is not real because we cannot see that? As I told you, the human senses: sight, smell, audition, touch, and taste. Those are the 5 human senses. We also have the intuition, but that's not classified formally as a human sense as such yet, because the science cannot prove that. And the problem with the science is that doesn't belong to us either. The science is also property of that institution. The scientific institutions who do experiments like the NASA, like the laboratories, especially in the United States, which is the country that has the most amount of scientific laboratories in the world, that institution belongs to them, right? We do not, well, we have the capacity, but we do not make our own experiments so we can prove that something is real or not. Like the NASA, like a lot of institutions that I prefer to stop talking about because this is a problematic topic, this is a problematic subject, and maybe it's not so convenient to talk about this, especially in this platform of YouTube. But there are many institutions who tell us what is real regarding to science and what is not real. So they define, they expose that organic portals are not real. The religion exposes that the bad energies doesn't behave like that. The bad energies behave like we say, and this is not actually the entire truth. A little bit, but not the whole concept of truth that we should know. Some people use this concept of organic portals metaphorically to describe individuals who seem disconnected from empathy and self-awareness. But this can be problematic if it becomes a way to dehumanize and avoid understanding others' behaviors through a psychological and compassionate lens. So let's analyze that for a second. We talk here about mental health, and if we do not want to help somebody who has a small amount of empathy in their acts and in their behavior, it's not that we don't want to help that person, it's that their acts happens for a reason. And sometimes, for example, the case that we're gonna evaluate here, they are aware that they don't have to do certain things, especially massive and compulsive acts, which the only purpose they have by doing them is harm people, but they don't do it because they're gonna harm people. They do it for the same reasons we already know, because they wanna get money, because they wanna get power, and they wanna be superior. They wanna settle themselves in the main spot of power. Never mind if they have to destroy a lot of people in their acts, and they understand and they know that they are destroying a lot of people in their acts. They are destroying the natural environment, and they do it anyway. So if you don't know certain things about your behavior, and if you don't know that your behavior is gonna have consequences, we could talk about we are dehumanizing. We have to get in the way so that person can avoid those mistakes. But when a person already knows that something is going to happen if they do something and they do it anyway, we cannot talk about lack of empathy from the psychological industry, which also belongs to the pharmaceutical industry, the industry of medicine, which is another institution of control, the medicine industry. Because as you remember, there are many branches of psychology. One of them is clinical psychology. We are analyzing this from the social psychology point, but I also want to get a little bit involved in clinical psychology. We work in the same field: clinical psychology, social psychology, sports psychology, analytical psychology. There are many branches, and they work for the pharmaceutical industry, which has a main group of ambassadors who call themselves as but I don't want to mention the name here in this channel. So there we go, guys. That's basically the definition of organic portals, and I want to highlight this thing, and I want to emphasize on this point very much because I want you to analyze the behavior of the guy that we're gonna see in this scene, and I want you to take your own conclusions. So let's go and watch the scene of General Hux' speech in Star Wars The Force Awakens 2015.
Today is the end of the Republic. The end of a regime that acquiesces to disorder. At this very moment, in a system far from here, the new Republic lies to the galaxy, while secretly supporting the treachery of the loathsome resistance. This fierce machine which you have built, upon which we stand, will bring an end to the Senate, to their cherished fleet. All remaining systems will bow to the First Order, and will remember this as the last day of the Republic!
Transfer to manual control.
Pick up! Fire!
It was the Republic!
Well guys, alrighty, that was so intense. But having already watched the scene, now I wanna expose you the main and important points about psychology and mental health I could notice. So, the first thing I wanna highlight is the hate in General Hux' eyes during his speech and the firing of Starkiller Base. When we focus on the hate in General Hux' eyes during his speech and at the moment when Starkiller Base fires, we're witnessing a highly charged psychological moment because the hatred is not just performative, it seems deeply internalized, erupting from somewhere much darker than simply political rhetoric. Why? Because it seems very real. Don't you think so? Don't you think that where have I seen this before? For example, it reminds me of the guy that has a mustache cut in the middle, who was from the ancient Germany at the time of the Second World War, with the political party and world party that started by the letter N. And sorry about talking like this, but we gotta be careful with the platform because this platform doesn't like this kind of subjects. But I just wanted to say that to explain the people who still believe that this is science fiction, that this is not. This is actually happening right now in this moment. Destroying nature, environment, killing a lot of people, not having any kind of remorse for doing it. And after doing it, he knows the consequences. He knows what he's doing, what he's causing right then at that moment.
If you're still thinking this is science fiction, then tell me, what is the difference between this?
All remaining systems will bow to the First Order, and will remember this as the last day of the Republic!
And this.
Gelobt ich mir zum ersten Mal, als unbekannter Einzelner diesen Krieg zu beginnen und mich zu ruhen, bis endlich diese Erscheinung aus dem deutschen Leben beseitigt sein würde.
this. And this. This. And this. This. And this. The future is no longer coming, it's already here.
So I'm gonna explain you my psychological point of view. Hatred as a defense mechanism against vulnerability by Hux, right? Hatred, especially when intense and outwardly visible, is often a mask for deep psychological vulnerability. People like Hux, operating in a rigid authoritarian systems, are often conditioned to suppress emotion, especially fear, sadness, or doubt. These weaker emotions are replaced by rage, which feels more powerful, more in control. And those are the kind of emotions, especially that those entities use to feed themselves. Do you remember what I told you in the manifestation video? In mental health context, this may affect narcissistic defense mechanisms. Intense hatred may arise when one's fragile ego is threatened. Hux, having lived under a regime where only strength is rewarded, strength, remember that. You gotta be strong, because if you're not strong, that means you're weak. Projects hate as a way to feel important, powerful, and safe when strength is rewarded. Do you remember? Early trauma and emotional repression. If someone grows up in a system or family as well that punishes vulnerability, like many cases you always hear about everywhere around, that punishes vulnerability, right? And rewards cruelty. That internalized, that model Hux facial expression shows someone who isn't just giving a speech, he's psychologically releasing years of suppressed emotion through aggression. And he expels all that aggression in innocent people. The ones they killed, right? The ones his Starkiller Base killed. Well, he shares that with Kylo Ren and with Snoke leader, right? The supreme leader in the example of the video. But do you think he may be an organic portal? Because don't you see that in his eyes, he's enjoying what he's doing? So based in his reaction when he was firing and destroying entire planets, entire environments and ecosystems, we can have our own opinion of what he's doing and what kind of person he is and what kind of costume he's wearing as a human, because definitely there's no doubt that he is an organic portal doing these kind of things, that there are people in real world who do those kind of things.
Now, regarding to the context, I'm gonna tell you something that I forgot to tell you in the beginning. Everything vibrates, even us human beings, and everything that vibrates does so at a certain speed, acquiring a specific frequency. This vibrational speed is measured in hertz, which is the unit used to describe how fast something vibrates. For example, in music, instruments produce sounds whose vibrations are captured by our ears and then decoded by our brain, the organ responsible for regulating all functions in the human body, the brain. Within the brain, something conscious becomes aware and reacts to the vibrations, frequencies, and/or energy perceived from all things and people that exist in the universe. The term conscious brain may vary depending on translation. In Spanish, we use the word
consciente,
which implies operating with your entity,
ente,
and the end of the word
consciente,
or in English, conscious, a concept that in spiritual contexts relates to awareness or conscious existence. And in Portuguese, a related term is
conhecimento.
meaning knowledge, as I told you. As I mentioned in my manifestation video, whose link I will leave here in the upper right corner, the Earth vibrates at 8 Hz, and the totality of everything vibrates at 432 Hz. 8 Hz of the Earth repeated 54 times, since 8 times 54 equals 432. The reason we do not perceive this as we do with music is that human beings can only hear frequencies between 20 and 20,000 Hz. Now you might be wondering, what does all of this have to do with organic portals and Hux's discourse?
Absolutely everything. Because as I explained at 12 minutes and 50 seconds in this video, this is not about dividing people, belittling anyone, or questioning that the human species is one single species. Biologically and rationally, physically and intellectually, we all share more or less the same characteristics. However, the difference lies in the way we react to situations, the way we process emotions, basically our personality. This is not physical, nor about race, nor sexual preference. None of that. It is exclusively about our behavior as human beings. Therefore, no person should be treated differently, even if their way of being matches some of the characteristics of what I have been referring to throughout this video as an organic portal. Human beings are composed of 3 elements: the body, the mind, and the soul. The soul is the vehicle through which a spirit is able to inhabit this earthly 3-dimensional plane, whose dimensions are height, width, and depth. The mind and the soul work together, and not all of us possess an individual spirit. Regarding spirits, their existence can be supported through the very affirmations of science. Energy is never destroyed, only transformed, and there are many testimonies that have left evidence of this, whose technical names will not be mentioned here. So, the statement that an organic portal is a person without a soul is false. All human beings have a soul. The difference is that the way the soul of an organic portal functions is not the same as the way the soul functions in someone who is not an organic portal. Souls evolve from a collective spirit to an individual spirit starting from the 3rd dimension. An example of the 1st dimension would be the planet itself, minerals, rocks, and crystals. An example of the 2nd dimension is flora, and the evolution of it, or dimension 2.5, could be animals, especially dogs and cats. In the 3rd dimension, we find humans, initially organic portals, who still possess a collective spirit, like all beings of the 1st and 2nd density, and then beings with a divine component who possess an individual spirit. And here comes the most important point of this video. Organic portals cannot develop emotions, morality, depth of reflection, and other similar qualities. These are things we usually attribute to a person's personality, like when we say, that person is just like that. But actually, that is not the case. Organic portals are individual on an organic level, but collective on an energetic level. This topic is always surrounded by a great deal of skepticism because it cannot be scientifically proven, especially through human vision, considering what I explained to you about the human sense of sight in the manifestation video. However, if human beings had the ability to see the human aura, we would be able to immediately identify the difference between an organic portal and an individual soul-bearing being. But how? Because the auras of these 2 types are completely different. In what way? In the chakras. Chakras are the energetic points through which energy flows and spreads throughout the body. They are the points that connect us with the reality that is invisible to the human eye. A human body with an evolved soul has 7 chakras, while organic portals only have 3. Organic portals only possess the root chakra, the sacral chakra, and the solar plexus chakra. This limitation removes their connection to the divine. They only possess an imitation function of the missing chakras, a form of imitation in relation to human beings with evolved souls, who do possess all 7 complete chakras.
Alrighty, the second point I want to react to is the collective psychosis and the loss of individual conscience. When Hux stands before the troops and speaks with such venom, we are also witnessing a classic case of group psychosis that is very common in this society. A psychological state in which the individual merges with the collective mind and suppresses their own conscience. Don't you remember about the institutions of power? Well, that's another proof that those institutions are real, and what they do, the work they do of washing your brain, of washing your thoughts, manipulating them, is real. This is deeply relevant in both historical and clinical mental health contexts. The individuation. The psychological phenomenon happens in large groups, particularly authoritarian ones, when an individual morality becomes replaced with a group identity. That's the danger of belief systems. Hux's hate is not just his own, it's the hate of the First Order's ideology funneled through him. Alrighty? His eyes do not show conflict. They show certainty. This absence of doubt may be the most terrifying mental health signal of all. A potential loss of empathic capacity, of internal resistance, or of self-awareness. Wow. And I want to highlight something as well here. When a person has a belief system that is very closed and rejects every other opinion, that has certainty, as we could notice in the eyes of Hux when he was shooting the Starkiller Base. And the big problem with this is that human beings are naturally emotional, and when you suppress and when you try to exterminate every kind of emotion, that makes you unhuman. So through this conclusion we can know what kind of person Hux is and what kind of people he's working for, because I want to tell you something about institutions. So the third point I want to react here is the ideological possession, the organic portal metaphor. If we consider the idea of an organic portal as a metaphor, someone who behaves metaphorically without higher consciousness or authentic empathy, General Hux fits that archetype during this scene. From a mental health perspective, this can be seen as total ego identification with ideology. Hux is no longer an individual with complex emotions, because something is being an individual with complex emotions and something else is to use that kind of emotions to harm someone, when that action has a reaction and a consequence, and in this case a negative consequence. So as I was saying, Hux is no longer an individual with complex emotions. He is now an extension of the First Order. His hatred is robotic, programmed. He speaks with religious fervor, as though he has been spiritually hijacked. And the moral disengagement. This is a psychological process where individuals rationalize unethical behavior by reframing it through ideology or authority, which is also very common in this society, right? Do you remember? Hux no longer sees the Republic as human. He sees targets, threats, enemies. This is the death of compassion. The fourth point I want to react is visual symbolism, facial tension and eye movement. Do you remember that gesture? That facial tension, that anger expression in his face? So, from a non-verbal communication standpoint, his eyes are wide and unblinking, suggesting hyperarousal in the nervous system, in fight mode. His facial muscles are tight, especially around the jaw and the brow, indicating intense internal pressure. These features are often seen in individuals when experiencing extreme emotional dysregulation, particularly when anger has completely overridden the prefrontal cortex. And you know that the prefrontal cortex is the area of the brain responsible for empathy, judgment, and regulation. That's what we can experience through the science, but not entirely at all. Take that into account. And the fifth point that I want to react to in Hux's speech is what this teaches us about mental health and society. General Hux' hate-filled eyes are not just a personal moment, they are a mirror of what happens when individuals are swallowed by dehumanizing ideologies, which also is very common. From a mental health avoidancy standpoint, it's called to recognize how emotional suppression or systemic conditioning can create people who act without empathy, understand that hatred often stems from pain, and when that pain is unprocessed, it can turn into destructive rage. Stay vigilant to the signs of emotional numbing, groupthink, and toxic ideology, both in fiction and in real life. Okay guys, the second thing I wanna react to is the lack of remorse of Hux when he destroys a lot of people. After destroying a lot of people, he has no remorse at all. The first thing we can see in Hux's behavior is the deficit in empathy. The absence of remorse after destroying countless lives reflects an alarming lack of empathy, a hallmark seen in some severe personality disorders. This detachment allows an individual to bypass the natural human response, or guilt or sorrow, effectively dehumanizing victims and justifying harmful actions, which is so serious because you cannot justify just because you have power destroying a lot of people. That will have a consequence because everything that we do in this life has consequences, and I think Hux doesn't know that. Okay, and the first thought I got regarding to that point, directly evidenced in the behavior of Hux, is the ideological conditioning and moral disengagement. Such extreme behavior often results from deep-rooted ideological conditioning. By suppressing natural empathetic responses, individuals can engage in mass destruction without psychological conflict, as they justify their actions completely distancing themselves from the human cost. And that's more than evident when he hides guilt, justifying his violence and justifying the destruction of environment and people. He doesn't see people, he doesn't see human beings they're shooting to. He sees the Republic, his enemy. He sees a virus that he wants to destroy. Alright folks, so after watching that scene, we can realize that the majority of things that we saw along the scene are not science fiction, as I was telling you. Those are real because in the world we have wars, in the world we have tyrants killing innocent people, we have huge armies killing innocent people, and I don't wanna focus in which party do you support because both sides are not good people. Both sides are bad people killing each other, and not because I wanna defend the classic phrase that exposes violence brings more violence. No, I actually mean this because you cannot be a good person, you cannot be a quality human being if you kill innocent people, because let's say that one side attacks you and you wanna defend yourself. The innocent people will always be the ones that will die, and you have no justification for killing them. Therefore, as we have war, we have environment contamination, and we have a lot of environment contamination. We could use like a kind of comparison with the fabrication of electric vehicles. The process of fabrication of electric vehicles contaminates tons, thousands of tons of water. What about the deforestation? What about the forest fires? Through this scene, we can notice that not everything that we saw in that scene is science fiction. Many things are real. Many times we try to ignore the evidences, but the evidences are clear and the evidences are there. So the question you must have is, why do they tell us the truth and why do they tell us the reality in the movies? Hiding the name by science fiction when actually it's reality. That would be a topic for another video, and I promise you I will talk about it. The next thing I wanna talk about is the collective conscience, and why. Because do you remember guys that in the first point I told you something about the collective conscience? Manipulating the wills of the others so they can obey you, they can do whatever you want them to do. So that is called collective conscience, and I wanna mention a crucial point here regarding to this topic. Manipulating many people to achieve a goal that always has not the best intentions. So collective conscience as normalization of atrocity. The chilling calm and even pride among the First Order troops watching fire the Starkiller Base reveals a dangerous psychological state. Atrocity becomes normalized. In such environments, individuals surrender moral judgment to the group, blinding themselves to the horror that they are conjuncting, to the horror they complicit in, because everyone else is doing the same. And that's what they define as correct. Never mind if you're killing someone, you just have to obey orders. And that leads me to the next point I wanna react here in this video reaction. And it is, these people don't work alone. These people don't work alone. Think about that for a second. Think about it. I think you're already familiar with this situation, right? That the big companies have a huge amount of employees. They have an apotheotic quantity of employees working for them. And we can realize about it here. Do you remember? As we can see, they have operators in the machines, in the computers, they have troopers, they have General, they have Kylo Ren, which is another boss. Hux is not the only boss. It is Kylo Ren, Hux, General Hux, all his fellows in the range of General, and the Supreme Leader Snoke, and that huge weapon that shoots the ray. So we're talking about a huge organization, very well structured here. So as we can see, those people are not rookies. They know very well what they are doing, and they are very well structured, and they have huge tons of money at their disposition. So that makes perfect sense, right? Because when you have power, you have money, you can do whatever you want, and you can hire the services of many people excellent in what they do to work for you. So maybe if you do a legal tramit and somebody offers you their attention, you're not dealing specifically with that person we're mentioning, for example, the government. You're not dealing with the president, nor the senators, not the Congress people. You're dealing only with the supervisor that sees from very down below that everything is working perfectly for them up in the top of the power. And it works the same for the religious institutions, for the science institutions, for the corporation world, for the government structure, and so on and so on. And we can have thousands of examples here. So normally the corporations that have the most big amount of employees don't have good intentions about life and about their projects. They have agendas, they have plans, they have agendas and evil plans that they don't tell you directly. Because obviously the main boss will not face you directly. They don't want to run that risk. They prefer that somebody down below helps them to do that work, because they don't want to pay the consequences of what they have been doing. That is something that we already mentioned, which is fear, hidden under the mask of that tenacity, of that strength that they project to the others, but they are not actually strong. So guys, as a last conclusion, I want to talk about the terms that General Hux uses to refer to the resistance. First of all, calling them like that, resistance. It's like a little bit rude, that term, to refer to those kind of people, because they call themselves rebellion. Luke called them rebellion. And let's analyze the meaning of resist. Resistance. It's to endure something, to take something and to keep it in you, to be able to pass it by and to be able to overcome it, to be able to achieve a purpose that you can only get resisting, right? And rebellion, think about it as well. Rebel, to rebel, it's to defy, to oppose, to disobey the authority and those sick ideologies that authority has. It's telling them, I won't let you abuse me and I won't let you do whatever the hell you want to do with me. I have dignity and I deserve respect. That's the real meaning of rebellion. So what can we expect from an organization that talks like that about the resistance, which are a bunch of people who talk about energies, who talk about balance, who live in the nature, in the environment, in the real world. For example, Luke Skywalker, who lives in a beautiful island, who understands very well the laws of the universe, who understands very well the behavior of the nature, of the Mother Earth. What can we expect from them? What can we expect from an organization that wants to kill them all? Who is looking for Luke Skywalker to kill him, to finish the light in the world, but they won't succeed it because light will always be there. As Metro Man from Mega Man said in his movie, there will always be the light to oppose to the darkness. It's a balance, and one of them cannot live without the other, cannot exist without the other.
You know, little buddy, there's a yin for every yang. If there's bad, good will rise up against it. It's taken me a long time to find my calling. Now it's about time you find yours.
So I think this was an important point to talk about here. I think the meaning of that word is very intense and very powerful. So guys, that was everything for today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for watching the video. Remember that every time more, the idea is to collect more people to this cause. More people who loves this idea of manifestation, of energies, of balances, of mental health. So thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you so much for joining our family. And thank you so much for watching the video until the end. Remember that we are not alone, and as we add more people to this this cause, the stronger we are. The more people we add, the stronger we get. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much. I will always tell you about this. I will always tell you that the union makes the force. So in the next video, we're gonna be talking about the fight between Luke Skywalker and Kylo Ren. So I think I have also many points in that battle to highlight and to talk about. Remember that despite we are having complicated times, the light will always stand. Alright? So thanks for watching, and remember, success and subjectivity for the society. The password through the one you will unlock the happiness and the success in your life. I hope you have a great day. I hope you have a great rest of week. You have a good evening, afternoon, day, whenever you're listening to this episode and wherever you're listening to this episode. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good time and see you next time. Bye.